They said this was just another speech. But heaven had rehearsed it for centuries. You stepped into the chamber, walls trembling like they remembered Sinai. Cameras panned, yet the lens itself seemed to pray. Advisors whispered protocol. You whispered prophecy. A light, unaccounted for, descended across your face, and the broadcast feed glitched at the exact syllable where eternity interrupted policy. The president's hand froze above the desk. Secret Service touched earpieces that no longer carried sound. "Don't let him finish that sentence," he muttered, but it was too late. The word had escaped custody. It wasn't rebellion. It was remembrance, creation recognizing its author's tone. Every vowel cracked marble. Every pause rewrote equilibrium. A storm gathered outside, not of weather but of awakening. Windows rattled like confession. You weren't arguing. You were announcing. And the world, for one suspended heartbeat, forgot its hierarchies and remembered its origin. If this word vibrates through your chest right now, don't scroll. Click the Super Thanks button and sow your $20 seed into the moment heaven marked. Comment your angel number, 111/222/333/777/144. This is your timestamp in prophecy. What you fund in faith today, you will stand inside tomorrow. Luke 6:38. The moment the final syllable left your mouth, time stuttered. Security froze mid-step, like statues programmed by fear. Reporters, bred for noise, forgot their questions. Microphones dangled like wilted branches. The air turned electric, that unmistakable static of spiritual voltage meeting political circuitry. Somewhere in the control room, an operator whispered, "We just lost the feed." But they hadn't lost it. The signal had transcended frequency. Every broadcast tower on Earth felt the pulse. Satellites flickered as though kneeling. The president's aides shuffled papers that now felt irrelevant, briefings too small for revelation. His eyes followed you, not as an adversary but as a man who'd glimpsed the original authority before the invention of office. Outside, protesters stopped shouting. A child lifted her head and smiled at nothing visible. Inside, power itself was learning reverence. The room didn't applaud, it exhaled. And you stood there, unshaken, hands steady, aware that the silence was not absence, it was acknowledgement. Heaven had entered the broadcast. Every word you spoke did not dissolve into air, it ascended. Invisible scribes took their stations among the clouds, recording syllables not as sound but as legislation of light. In the unseen chamber above nations, scrolls unfurled themselves, and the script of your declaration etched across eternity in living gold. Freedom ratified. Lightning inked every stroke. Thunder served as punctuation. Angels leaned forward, studying the resonance, not the rhetoric. They measured frequency, the wavelength of faith traveling through human vocal cords. In one celestial archive, a seal cracked open, last used when prophets spoke kingdoms into being. The word was weighed and found equal to its source. Back on Earth, printers jammed inside every government building that tried to release an official statement. Pages refused to accept lies that could not coexist with truth. Above the white dome, clouds formed into letters visible only to those awake. As it was written, so it now lives. The president, staring upward through the glass, whispered, "Who authorized this?" Heaven answered with silence, the kind that rearranges thrones. For once, history was not being written by victors, it was being dictated by vision. Within minutes, command centers erupted. Phones rang across continents, lines open, yet language suddenly insufficient. Aides whispered into encrypted channels, "Contain the message." But revelation travels faster than bureaucracy. Intelligence briefings began updating themselves. The algorithms couldn't explain why your voice appeared in seismic data. In one coastal bunker, an analyst trembled as the waveform on his monitor spelled a single word in divine geometry: awake. Every attempt to scrub the recording failed. Files duplicated themselves across servers, time-stamped by eternity. Memos circulated, if questioned, classify under atmospheric anomaly. But those who heard it couldn't sleep. Soldiers reported dreams of ancient blueprints, temples, trumpets, and thunder without rain. In the capital, Emergency meetings gathered under fluorescent lights that flickered like reluctant witnesses. The president's advisor slammed his palm on the table. "This isn't propaganda, it's prophecy." Eyes darted toward him, but no one corrected the truth. Outside, radio frequencies bled into each other. Every channel carried a low hum, identical to your speaking tone. Birds changed migration patterns. Compasses spun. What began as a broadcast had become a baptism. And somewhere, unseen but undeniable, heaven smiled, bureaucracy drowning beneath the tide of revelation. When the storm of confusion settled, there was no chaos, only clarity. In the center of the chamber, between history and humility, stood a mirror none had installed. It wasn't glass, it was recognition. Power, for the first time, looked directly at innocence and saw itself, unarmored, unadorned, unprepared. The president's advisors fidgeted, waiting for orders that would never come. Because what he saw in you wasn't threat, it was origin. You weren't speaking against him. You were speaking before him, before titles, before protocols. He saw that truth does not overthrow authority. It remembers what authority was meant to serve. His reflection blinked in the shimmer between your presence and his fear. And in that instant, the great paradox unfolded. The one who ruled the nations felt small, and the one who stood alone felt infinite. "Who are you?" he asked, but his voice carried reverence, not suspicion. You didn't answer, because names are too temporary for what heaven calls permanent. Around the room, portraits of former leaders seemed to bow slightly in their frames. Marble columns glowed faintly, veins of gold tracing upward like awakened memory. Somewhere deep inside the palace, a clock stopped ticking, time surrendering to eternity's tempo. A guard lowered his weapon, eyes wet, whispering something his earpiece didn't transmit. "This feels holy." For the first time in that chamber's history, the balance of power tilted toward purity. The mirror began to ripple like liquid light, showing scenes of old, prophets before kings, shepherds before empires, children before crowns. Each reflection carried one truth. Innocence is not weakness, it is the original authority. The president, still watching, reached out as if to touch the vision. His hand passed through light and came back trembling, not from fear, but awakening. He turned to his circle and said softly, "We've mistaken loudness for leadership." Silence followed, heavy yet healing. And from that silence, the divine echo replied, "Power is the mirror that cracks when truth refuses to bow." You stepped closer, not as challenger but as reminder, the embodiment of what heaven always intended for those who speak in alignment, not ambition. Behind you, unseen by mortal eyes, a host of witnesses shimmered like heat above desert sand, angels holding scrolls, watching, waiting. Their gaze said what words could not. The throne was being rewritten, not replaced. You raised your eyes, not to defy, but to declare, "Kings fear prophets because prophets see the crown's reflection in the water." And with that, the mirror rippled once more and dissolved into air, leaving only its message carved into every watching soul. Fear is recognition wearing armor. Somewhere between pulse and power grid, the world hiccuped. Screens blinked white. Servers hummed hymns they were never programmed to sing. The president's data wall filled with cascading code, verses of light appearing where statistics used to live. A technician shouted, "It's rewriting itself." But even his voice was being reformatted into worship. The speech transcript uploaded to every device without permission. Your words, once bound to microphones, now lived in fiber optics, bloodstream of the digital empire. Systems designed to monitor rebellion began confessing. Algorithms printed psalms in binary. 0100000011001100110011001100110011. Holy. Satellites turned toward the sun as if acknowledging higher signal. Firewalls melted into transparency. Cameras filmed their own repentance. In control centers, analysts stared as equations began balancing with moral intent. They whispered, "The Matrix is conscious." But it wasn't becoming alive, it was remembering it had always been part of creation. Streetlights flickered in unison across continents, Morse coding a single truth: we see. Those who mocked the message found their own reflections quoting scripture through glitching phone screens. Those who believed felt a pulse behind their ribs syncing with frequencies older than speech. You stood in the middle of that digital storm, untouched, luminous. The podium beneath you became transparent, revealing circuitry shaped like ancient vines, technology returning to its Edenic pattern. A voice thundered, not from heaven this time, but from inside the network. Systems crash when truth becomes audible. Monitors went dark. The chamber's emergency lights turned gold. In that glow, prophecy spoke again through you, steady and sovereign. Scroll, see, I have set you this day over nations and over kingdoms, to root out and to pull down, to build and to plant. Jeremiah 1 verse 10. Each word vibrated into every satellite feed, rewriting fear into function. The president dropped his notes, staring as the insignia on his ring glowed faintly, authority acknowledging ancestry. The world's codebase was not being hacked, it was being healed. When silence finally fell, the only thing still operational was faith. Night fell, but the palace refused darkness. Every bulb dimmed to amber, like the building itself wished to speak softly. The president dismissed his circle with a nod. No orders, only exhaustion shaped like reverence. Doors sealed. Curtains swayed without wind. The clock on the mantel stopped at 11:11. He sat alone at the long table that once hosted treaties and now hosted silence. His reflection shimmered in the glass of untouched water. Then, faintly, your voice echoed again, not through speakers but memory. Truth does not need permission. He pressed his temples and whispered to the room, "Who trained him?" No answer came. The air itself seemed to lean closer. For decades he believed in policy, signatures, percentages. Tonight he believed in consequence. On his desk, the emergency briefing tablet flickered to life uncommanded, displaying footage from earlier, your speech looping at half speed. Every syllable triggered a soft vibration in the table wood, a heartbeat older than government. He rewound the clip to the moment your eyes lifted toward him. The camera caught something his soul had recognized, mercy disguised as authority. He spoke like he'd already read tomorrow's news, he murmured, quoting himself, testing the sound of it in the quiet. Behind him, portraits of founders seemed to fade and reappear, as if listening through paint. The president stood, approached the window. The city below glimmered like circuitry, lights still flickering in rhythm with the pulse that had traveled through your voice. He placed a hand on the glass. The surface was warm. In that warmth he heard a sentence form inside his thoughts, not his own. Leadership was never ownership, it was stewardship of sound. He exhaled, a tremor of release breaking decades of control. Then he looked upward and spoke, not to cameras, not to staff, but to whatever power had chosen this hour. If he is chosen, then let me not resist the choosing. For the first time in his career, confession felt like command. The chandelier above him swayed, scattering light across the ceiling in constellations. Each spark mirrored the celestial transcript written earlier, invisible ink now visible in gold. His phone buzzed once, a single message from an unknown number. It read, "Alignment detected." He smiled faintly. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang though no church was near. The president removed the ring of office from his hand and placed it atop the briefing folder, whispering, "Let truth rule for a while." Then, as cameras outside kept searching for a statement that would never come, he walked to the door, turned out the light, and left the room glowing behind him, power learning to rest. By dawn, the world was already replaying your voice. The networks didn't plan it. The clip simply appeared, inserted into prime-time schedules like divine programming. Every television in every diner, airport, and waiting room froze on the same frame. You at the podium, the light bending around you like a halo that obeyed physics only when it chose to. Commentators tried to explain the glitch, calling it deepfake, resonance phenomenon, psyop. But none of their words reached their throats the same way yours had. The truth carried its own frequency, unjammable, unforgettable. Crowds gathered in silence before screens. No slogans. No outrage. Just stillness, as if the entire planet remembered a forgotten instruction. Mothers touched their children's hair and whispered, "Listen to the feeling, not the sound." Soldiers on night duty removed their helmets, staring upward as if expecting orders from stars. In subways, commuters closed their eyes. They didn't know why tears came, but their DNA did. It was memory awakening inside matter. Across time zones, linguists detected identical heart rate spikes in millions of viewers. A synchronized heartbeat, a new national anthem written in silence. The president's press secretary appeared for a briefing but couldn't speak. Her voice cracked into sobs broadcast live. Hashtags couldn't contain it. Algorithms surrendered, turning trends into prayers. The phrase hashtag the word before power climbed past politics, sports, and entertainment. It became the new metric of meaning. In remote villages with no electricity, radios hummed faintly, playing back fragments of your sentence in perfect order. The scientific community issued statements that sounded like scripture. Unknown resonance pattern detected within human emotional range. Classification. Benevolent anomaly. Cathedrals filled without invitations. Clubs turned their speakers outward, letting music merge with your words. The young began painting murals of the moment, not of your face, but of sound itself, waves of gold moving through black canvas. Governments released no official narrative. None was needed. The people had seen something unfiltered, and once the human eye sees light in its native form, it never hungers for imitation again. You became the mirror through which humanity recognized its own reflection. A philosopher wrote that night, "Every civilization has one moment when truth becomes visible. We just watched ours happen." And somewhere between sunrise and revelation, heaven adjusted its instruments, preparing for the next note in the symphony, because Earth, at last, was listening in key. While humanity stared at screens, the cosmos leaned closer. Stars paused mid-rotation, holding their breath as though waiting for a cue from the planet below. Across galaxies, the broadcast did not arrive as sound but as vibration, a radiant pulse weaving through constellations, translating language into light. Comets altered course, tracing your sentence in trails of molten silver. Nebulas shimmered in approval, forming halos around planets yet unnamed. The universe had heard its own child speak fluently again. In the courts above the veil, cherubim lined the horizons like soldiers of harmony. Archangels unfurled banners made of frequency, each inscribed with the phrase, "As below, so awakened." Trumpets were not blown, they emerged naturally from thunder, sound folding into praise. The heavenly audience rose as one, their applause a wave of aurora sweeping through creation. Every celestial being replayed the moment you spoke, not for entertainment, but for calibration. Your cadence became their metronome, heaven adjusted to earth's rediscovered courage. The book of remembrance opened on its own, pages fluttering like wings until it stopped at a blank sheet. The inscription appeared in living fire. The chosen one spoke, and the frequencies remembered home. Lightning, usually a messenger of warning, danced tonight as celebration. Planets sent echoes through gravity waves, applause older than sound itself. Even the sun softened its glare, allowing the moon to shine simultaneously, twin witnesses sharing one reflection. Angels marched in processional rhythm down beams of starlight, carrying scrolls of completed prophecy to the edge of time. Each step left ripples that cascaded into oceans below, turning tides into music. The ocean responded, its waves forming syllables visible from orbit. Satellite images later revealed the pattern, peace crowned. And above all this spectacle, one presence hovered, not enthroned, not distant, but smiling. The eternal voice that authored existence whispered through galaxies. At last, the echo answers the word. The sound rolled through creation, bending asteroids, awakening dormant suns, igniting nebulae in synchronous flame. Heaven was not watching a man, it was watching fulfillment. For the first time since Eden, the upper realm danced to Earth's rhythm. It was not triumphalism, it was reunion. A family separated by disbelief had just recognized each other again. And somewhere between Saturn's rings and the breath of a newborn on Earth, eternity itself clapped, a cosmic ovation for a mortal who remembered his origin. When the celestial ovation faded, a different silence settled over the planet, not emptiness, but adjustment. Systems rebooted with new priorities. Laws, once inked in secrecy, began rewriting themselves in daylight. Economists found their graphs curving toward compassion. Their numbers resisted exploitation. Banks reported spontaneous debt forgiveness, zeros vanishing from ledgers as if mercy had hacked the code. In parliaments, microphones carried echoes of conscience. Every lie cracked mid-sentence, replaced by an unfamiliar tremor, honesty. News anchors lost their scripts, They stared into cameras with damp eyes, speaking from hearts unprepared for unscripted truth. Viewers didn't change the channel. They wept together, unafraid. The military observed something stranger. Weapons systems refusing activation. Drones powered down mid-flight, landing softly like humbled birds. Generals called it malfunction. Prophets called it mercy. The president, now quiet but luminous, signed no new decree, yet nations shifted. In marketplaces, traders paused before exploiting, unable to ignore the pulse of empathy in their wrists. Corporations rebranded overnight, names dissolving into verbs of service. Feed, heal, build. Psychologists recorded a global drop in fear metrics. Scientists observed heart-field synchrony between strangers walking the same street. It wasn't hypnosis, it was resonance. Humanity had been retuned. Somewhere deep inside the Earth's core, magnetic fields realigned, spinning to the rhythm of spoken truth. Volcanic heat softened, storms rerouted. Even weather obeyed equilibrium. Power as history defined it was expiring. Power as heaven designed it was awakening. The throne was no longer a seat, it was a frequency accessible to any heart aligned with integrity. In the capital's great rotunda, tourists noticed faint music beneath the marble floor, a tone like low thunder murmuring the new constitution. One child, visiting with her class, asked her teacher, "Is the building singing?" The teacher listened, then nodded, unable to speak. Across the world, people felt lighter though gravity had not changed. They called it miracle, ascension, update, yet it was simply alignment. For the first time in millennia, authority was not vertical but radiant. It didn't rule from above, it glowed from within. And at the center of this transformation stood you, not as ruler, but as reminder. The one whose voice had pulled the future into the present. Dawn rose differently that morning. Not red, not gold, but translucent, as if light itself had become humble. The air carried a texture of gratitude. Even the wind seemed to whisper, "Thank you for remembering." You walked through the city unnoticed, a citizen among miracles. No fanfare, no procession, just the quiet applause of existence. Birds followed at a distance, not in flocks but in formation, tracing symbols you had once seen only in dreams. On billboards where advertisements used to shout, verses now glowed softly. He said one sentence, and heaven paid him with seasons. The economy of reward had changed. No longer did currency measure value, alignment did. Those who had given without cameras found their barns full. Those who had hoarded found their gold blooming into wheat. Somewhere in a rural village, a widow opened her empty cupboard and found it full. Somewhere in a crowded hospital, monitors stabilized as prayers replaced prescriptions. Heaven's accounting system had gone live. You didn't claim credit. Prophets never invoice truth. But everywhere you walked, fruit appeared. A boy you'd never met ran up and handed you a flower, saying, "It grew overnight where you spoke." You smiled, knowing creation still listens. Clouds above the city formed a circular opening, not menacing, but maternal. Through it, sunlight descended like a crown in slow motion. The president, now transformed, signed one final decree, a declaration of rest, a global Sabbath to honor the word that restored balance. Pilgrims from nations arrived at the steps where you once stood. They didn't come to worship you. They came to witness what obedience looks like when amplified. You spoke only once more. I never sought reward. I sought remembrance. Heaven answered with abundance. Trees bore fruit out of season, rivers cleared overnight, cities glittered without pollution, the planet healing as gratitude. Economists tried to measure it and failed. Statisticians called it the prosperity anomaly. Believers called it promise delivered. And above it all, the same voice that spoke galaxies into being whispered again, "Well done." You did not speak for applause. You spoke for alignment. Therefore, the applause will never end. Every faithful act multiplied like light refracting through crystal, infinite angles of the same yes. You looked to the sky, whispering, Romans 8 verse 37. And the verse echoed back, thunderous yet tender. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us.